Are you interested in studying abroad but not sure where to begin with your planning? In today's video, I'm going to walk you through some of the steps that you can take no matter where you want to study overseas. If you are new to the channel, welcome. My name is Kimber. I'm a study abroad specialist. I help high school, college, and graduate students around the world realize their study abroad dreams. And if you are returning, welcome back. So in today's video, what I'm going to be walking you through is basically answering the question of how to plan, because I know that this is something that students, no matter where they are within their journey, no matter what sort of grade level they're at, they're interested in figuring out how to actually plan for study abroad. And so I want to take you through that step by step in sort of the overall themes of what you need to think about. So basically, there's going to be three different areas, and you can think of it as a mini book. So essentially, what happens before you study abroad, what happens during the process of applying, and then what basically happens either after you apply or after you are actually accepted. So we're going to start out by talking about what you do beforehand. So when you were first getting started in this process of wanting to study abroad, starting to just figure out, like, is this something I actually want to do? I always tell students that the first thing you want to do is to start with your why. So not where do I want to go, not what program should I do, not how much does it cost. You want to figure out why you are doing this. This is going to be an integral part of not only figuring out what type of program to do, but also as well figuring out how long you want to do it, figuring out where you might want to eventually work afterwards, whatever you're going to be doing. And so starting with your why is key. Now, one of the things that a lot of students ask me when I work with them through my advising program is they'll say, well, is there a certain typical why that people need to have? There are so many different whys, but I will tell you that there are a few common ones. So the first one is definitely going to be that students are interested in traveling because traveling is a great experience. And particularly as a student, you just get access to so many things. There are lots of student discounts and different things like that. And you get a chance to live in a different country. I mean, who would not want to do that? Particularly when you don't have a lot of responsibilities. You probably have not started a family yet or anything like that. And so it's a great time to do it. So a lot of students do choose to study abroad because they are interested in traveling and getting a chance to go overseas. Another reason that a lot of students like to do it is they want to build their network. And so we know that in the world that we live in now, particularly in this more global world, that you definitely want to have as many connections as possible. And it's a great way to do it. Again, building with people who are in the same place as you in terms of their career level, but then also as well as you're going through school and internships and other things overseas, you get to expand your professional network. It's something that I have done and that a lot of the students that I know who I have worked with and other students who have studied abroad, that's one of the reasons why they do it. Another reason why students may choose to study abroad when they say, what is my why? Is that they may want to eventually work overseas. And so this is something where you can sort of get your foot in the door. And again, you're just starting out, you're making those connections, but it's a great way to do it. And there are 1,000 other whys. So I always like to tell students that there's not a specific why of what you need to focus on, but you need to be very clear about that. And one of the things that I can give you is it is a freebie. It is my starter worksheet. So with this study abroad starter worksheet, it's going to be great to sort of get you thinking about your why. So within this worksheet, what you're going to do is you start out by planning, what is my why? What are my goals of study abroad, to just kind of get the ideas flowing of what might be useful for you as you begin on this journey. So you can click into the description box and go ahead and download that. It's absolutely free and it takes about 10 minutes to complete. So it's a great sort of starter worksheet to begin with this process. But I would definitely say that once you answer your why, you're going to have a clear idea of what everything else looks like. So in this next phase of before you apply, there are two different parts here. And I know that sometimes they can often overlap because, for example, if you are someone who is more price conscious, then that may automatically determine where you want to go and sort of how long you want to stay. But for a lot of students who are really set on a location, or they feel that a particular location or program is going to be great for their degree or future career opportunities, then the price does not matter as much and they will make it work. But I would say that the next thing you sort of need to think about is, where do you want to go and when do you want to go? Because those are going to be two key things to sort of set the tone for what you want to do. And I would say, particularly with where you want to go, you need to think about, in terms of your personality, what might fit you more. Do you like warmer climates? Do you like cooler climates? Do you like cultures that are going to be super outgoing? Do you want cultures that are a little bit more reserved? In terms of food, do you have certain dietary restrictions that maybe certain countries may not be able to honor? Maybe they're not in that certain space like a lot of Western countries. So you need to really think that through. And then also as well, when do you want to go? A lot of students struggle with this. I know that a lot of students are like, should I go in the summertime? Should I go for a year? Should I go in the fall? It really just, should I go multiple times like I did? So you really want to think that through, and the starter worksheet will definitely help you with that. And last but not least, before you sort of dive into applying, is you need to think about the cost. And when I say cost, I'm not just talking about the actual sticker price that you see on a website. You need to think about the overall cost. So typically when you're considering studying abroad, you have the tuition cost, but then you may also have your housing costs, which might be separate. You also may have a more expensive visa to apply for. And last but not least, you actually have to live and survive once you get there and hopefully have some fun. So you need to factor all that in, and you'll be able to do that by sort of learning what's the overall general basic cost of living of where you want to go. And you can factor that in. And then you also need to start thinking through how you're going to actually be able to do that. Are your parents going to be helping support you? Are you going to have to save money before you go? Are you going to be going after scholarships? All those things make a difference in terms of deciding either where you want to go, when you want to go, and how much you're willing to spend. So before you decide to study abroad, definitely remember the 3 W's and the H. That's your why for going, where you want to go, when you want to go, and how much you plan to spend. So during the application process, so we have already done the work beforehand. Now we have moved into the fact that you've decided on some programs. You're like, I really want to go after this. And now you are in the application process. So with this particular space, even though it seems like it is the most work, I often feel like the beforehand is the most, because once you sort of get going, you're going to be in a lot of a rhythm in terms of kind of knowing that, hey, I'm going through these applications. A lot of them will sort of appear the same in the basic information, and a lot of applications tend to mirror each other in what they're asking for. So as you're going through the application process, what I always like to say to students is, once you decide on the programs that you want to apply for, typically a lot of students will narrow down between 5 and 7 programs. And once you do that, what you want to do is, before you actually get into the weeds of everything, most programs are really great about at least trying to list what they actually are looking for on the website. And if they don't, they may have access to the portal already available for you before you dive too deep into the application. So I definitely want you to be able to go through and figure out specifically what you're going to need. And I also have a template for that as well. It's just a basic tracker. It's also free. And with that, it's a great way to stay organized. That is going to be a key term that you will hear if you're on my channel. And if you know anything about planning for study abroad, it's similar to when you were applying for college or university, or if you were in high school. Just think about it as a way to prepare for that, because you definitely have to stay organized with this, especially if you are applying to multiple programs, because there are different deadlines, there are different needs, even though a lot of them may have some crossover. And so you want to make sure that you have all of your ducks in a row. So in terms of the actual application process, like I said, you want to go through and figure out what they're asking for. So we know that there's going to be a basic application. When you're applying to anything, there's a basic application. What's your name? Usually what's your date of birth? All that great informational stuff. But then they're going to start going through and saying the specifics. So a lot of study abroad programs will ask you for letters of recommendation. So that is one of the things that a lot of students will struggle with, because they're like, hey, like I have not done a lot of work, or maybe I'm, still in school and I'm still trying to formulate relationships with teachers to be able to write me recommendations. But you're going to need to figure out who can write you letters of recommendations if that is required. And I have a video on that I will link above, where I talked about some of the ways to avoid bad recommendations, which is definitely something that you don't want for your study abroad career or your college career. So definitely watch that video after you finish this one. But I will say that in terms of letters of recommendations, you may have to figure that out. A lot of study abroad programs will also ask you to write essays or themes. And so at the time that you first enter the application, they may not specifically have it. It may be further down the road, but a lot of times they will want to see that. Now, they are not necessarily looking at, your writing style and your grammar, although of course you need to have good grammar as much as you can. I know that, for example, if English is not your first language, then maybe it may be a little bit off, but what they're looking to see is in terms of you actually answering the questions. So usually that's going to come in either the form of a personal statement or a statement of purpose. Now, to quickly explain the difference between a personal statement and a statement of purpose, personal statements are much more of a Northern American and in some parts of Asia type of essay. And so with personal statements, it really is something that is a little bit more freestyle in a lot of ways. They may sometimes give you a little bit of a prompt, but a lot of times they may just ask you something simple like, why do you want to study abroad? And a lot of times students will take that, or they may say like, tell us about your interest in going to Germany. And you're talking about that, but within the personal statement, you're talking more about how it relates to you specifically, and maybe some of your personal background. Maybe your family is German and you want to connect with your roots, and this is how you're going to use the program, and this is how it actually works, and this is how you came about finding this actual program. Whereas with a statement of purpose, it's a lot different. You will find statement of purpose in a lot of schools in the UK, in parts of the EU, and parts of the Middle East, where it really is you trying to sell what you're going to bring to the program. So it's less about you as a person and more about why you would fit into the actual program and why the school should choose you. So just kind of keep that in mind. I will do a video actually on statement of purpose and personal statement to flesh that out more, but either one of those might be required, and in some cases, both of them might be required. So keep that in mind. Also, as well, if you are, let's say, coming to a country where you don't speak the language, there may be a certain requirement for that. I know that a lot of students who are coming to places like the US or Canada or parts of the UK, other places where English is the first language, you are required to do different exams, such as TOEFL. And so that may be required. Also, as well, if you are applying to particularly schools here in the US, you may have to do other standardized tests such as the SAT or the GMAT, GRE, different standardized tests that we normally have within our culture. So definitely consider that as well. Last but not least, I would definitely just say that included in that is also going to be transcripts. So you need to figure out, are they looking for unofficial transcripts or official transcripts? If you need to request those, you're going to need to just make sure that you understand the process of that. So definitely use the tracker worksheet that I gave you, but you need to be organized in terms of knowing the deadlines, knowing exactly what is going to be required, so that as you get into the process of filling out the application, you won't be behind and you can find that it flows a lot faster. So that's what you're going to be doing during the time that you are applying. And then you're going to be moving to the next step, which is going to be hopefully getting into the program of your dreams. So now that you've moved into phase 3, so we're at the last chapter of the book, as we would say, you are now in the phase where you have applied and there are some things that you are thinking about. So this could either be right after you apply, or it could be even once you are finally accepted into your program, where you're really starting to bring it all together. So one of the things that a lot of students really focus on at this point is going to be scholarship funding. We know that study abroad is very expensive, and a lot of ways that students are able to fund their studies, particularly if they're doing it at a degree level, is going to be scholarships. And a lot of times you can only apply for those scholarships once you have either initially applied for the program or once you are accepted. There really just depends on the actual program. There are some that will have the application sort of once you submit your full application for study abroad, they will have, do you want to apply for a scholarship? You apply for the scholarship. And in some ways that correlates with how they choose students. They may choose students who are really great for a scholarship, and maybe there are some areas where they're not as strong, but they feel like if they get this scholarship, they can really use a study abroad opportunity to boost themselves. And for some other programs, you apply for the scholarship and then you just only hear back when you actually get accepted to your program. And for some, you obviously don't hear back. So you definitely want to factor that in. I would say also within this umbrella of once you apply and assuming that you've gotten accepted, I know that any of my students out there, if you work with me, you're definitely getting in. I have done study abroad so many times. I know what I'm doing here. And so within this particular phase, you're also starting to think about your visa, right? And so on this channel, I talk a lot about visas. I still have more to talk about with that. But with the visa process, it sounds really scary to students because they're like, I don't know what to do. And I understand that. I mean, you're kind of in that situation with everything that you do for the first time, but it's not as intimidating as you would think. And so I would say that one of the things that you would want to figure out within the application process is, how is the visa going to be handled? Because there are some study abroad programs, particularly those that are much more shorter length, that will often be able to help you. And so what that means is that once you apply and you get accepted, you hand over your passport and all your documents to them. they work closely with the consulate or the embassy and they get the visa issued for you. But for a lot of students, particularly if you are a degree level student, you have to do all the legwork on your own. And it's not as difficult as it is. There's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of specifics. I mean, there are certain visas where if you even have blue ink pen and they ask for black ink pen, then it can get denied. So you just have to be very into the details. And so I would say that it's not as overwhelming as it is that you just have to be really focused when you're doing it. But that's something that you're definitely going to think about as you were going through once you get past the actual application process. The other part of that as well is that you would just need to think about all the different fees that you will incur. So you would have maybe already paid an application fee for to actually apply to the program. But then also too, once you get accepted to a program, there may be a deposit that you have to pay. You're also going to think about the fact that if you have to secure housing, you may have to show a certain amount of money in your bank account. And same thing with your visa. A lot of visas require that you show a certain amount in your bank account in order for them to be able to issue the visa. And there may also be, and there usually is, a visa fee as well. So all these things are important to think about. I know that it can be very overwhelming as you're trying to go through and figure it out and compile it. I'm so happy that you have found this channel and that you're going to get the information that you need. And what I want you to do now is to start thinking into the future. So you have gone ahead and gotten into the study abroad program of your dreams. Now I want you to watch this video so that you can find out what you need to do before you leave. I'll see you over there.